Welcome to Stronger Than Lipedema, the show dedicated to empowering women with lipedema through knowledge, support, and real life solutions. I'm Cindy, your host, along with Christy, my co host. And we are fellow advocates on this journey to better health, confidence, and well being. Each episode, we dive deep into the world of lipedema, bringing you expert insights, inspirational personal stories, and the latest strategies to help you manage your condition with confidence. Whether you're newly diagnosed or have been navigating lipedema for years, you're in the right place. Let's take this journey together because you're not alone. Now let's get started. Welcome to the show. Today we have Lisa with us. She lives in Canada. Lisa is going to start off by just sharing a little bit about yourself.
Sounds perfect. Well, yes, my name is Lisa. I live in Canada, north of the border, fellow Lippy sister. I love to talk about anything lipedema. I was kind of laughing with my husband because I said to him, "What am I going to talk about?" And he was like, "You will talk about anything with anybody if they are willing to listen about lipedema." So yeah, I kind of laughed and thought that was true. I would say for me, my journey with lipedema, as most of us, I had no clue I had it until a few years ago. When I look back, I see it when I was a teenager, but I really noticed it after I had my children. I have two adult sons, and when I was pregnant with them, I gained a lot of weight, 55 pounds with one and 75 pounds with the other. Even during my pregnancies, I remember my doctor saying, "What are you eating?" I remember thinking, I'm not eating that bad. I wasn't eating the greatest, but I wasn't eating that terrible. I think just the inflammation in my body at the time of pregnancy that I didn't know.
Mhm.
My legs grew like crazy during my pregnancy. I have so many stretch marks from when I was pregnant, but I thought nothing of it because the women in my family all have the same legs. We all have the same genetics. And I'm like, well, I just have the same legs as everybody else. And that's my unfortunate hereditary that I just have these legs. So never thought anything of it. And I have this one friend who has the most amazing legs. I'm always so jealous of her legs. And I just remember thinking, she has other parts of her body she hates. I just hate my legs. And that was it. Right. So in my young adult years, like in my early 20s, I had my kids young in my early 20s. And that was in the early to mid 90s. And dieting was such a fad then, right? Like we had so many diet pills and Weight Watchers. I can't even think of the amount of times I have joined Weight Watchers and quit and rejoined. I think I was on Weight Watchers since I was a teenager. It just didn't matter what I did. I always tried to get rid of these legs and it never happened. So that was my journey of when I first noticed that.
I think that is a very similar story to everybody. And I feel like you're probably in the same age range as me because my older children I also had in the 90s. But now that I think about it, I wasn't diagnosed until I think it's been like a year and a half. And only because I saw somebody on social media.
Mhm.
And before that, I did the typical what everybody does, the dieting, the exercising. I think I've probably tried literally every single diet that's out there. I would get really small on the top, but nothing would change on my lower body. It's hard to remember back that many years ago when we were young
Yeah.
or when we first went through puberty. I do have some recalls like back in, high school and stuff where I know I didn't dress like everybody else. I don't think I've worn shorts in, I don't even know,
Mhm.
40
Yeah.
years. So, it wasn't even at, summer with your girlfriends and stuff. I wasn't out hanging out in shorts.
I agree.
So, can you tell me, based off of your location, how was your diagnosis journey? Like getting diagnosed, how did you figure out that you had it? Did you see somebody on social media?
Well, it was a long process for me, and mostly because looking back, I was very stubborn. I would say it was around 2017. I was in the depths of perimenopause, which obviously I didn't know at the time. I was barely eating. I was having a lot of health issues, and I was probably the skinniest I'd ever been, but also the most unhealthy. I had ever been at the time. And my legs were just like they were constantly aching. Like they've always ached my whole life, which I thought was normal, but this was becoming way more intense. So I started a cycle of 2 years of going to my doctor, telling him something's wrong with my legs, him running every single test he possibly can think of, and everything coming back normal. There was never anything wrong with me. In Canada, lipedema is not a recognized disease. So this was not something that was even remotely on my doctor's radar to look at. So for 2 years, this process went on and on. And finally, I think it was around late 2019, I went to him and I just was like, this is becoming ridiculous. I'm starting to not be able to function with these legs. And he was just at a loss. And I had said to him, what do you think if I go see my naturopath? I completely believe in both realms of medicine. I think they both have a place in our medical system. And he was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Maybe she will think or know of something that I don't know. So I went to her and she didn't know at that time about lipedema either, but she did recognize something was wrong with my lymphatic system because I had so much swelling and puffiness around my knees that she felt something's not draining properly. And so she referred me to a lymphatic massage therapist. I went to her, and it was her who instantly said to me, "Have you ever heard of lipedema?" I was like, "No." While she's massaging my legs and doing the MLD, she's telling me about lipedema and how she had a few patients who have gone to surgery in Germany. And I remember lying there thinking, like, surgery in Germany, who does that? And, at the time, I just remember thinking, okay, like, what kind of cuckoo business is this? So I went home and I did a deep dive into Google. I was actually opposite of what I hear most. I hear a lot of women who say, I heard about it, I researched, and within 6 months, I booked an appointment for surgery. I was the opposite. I researched and I didn't want this. I didn't want a disease. I was in denial. I wanted this to be something simple that I could fix. My legs are aching. Maybe I can take some kind of medication. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to have a disease. I didn't want this to be something that was going to be hereditary in my family. I think at that point I mentioned it to my husband and maybe a couple close friends, but that was it. I didn't look at it again. It was around late 2019. Then COVID happened and life became super stressful. My job was stressful. In 2022, it started to grow in my arms. Often wear blazers to work because I work in an office. And one day I went to put on a blazer and I couldn't get my arm in it. I was like, what's happening here? And so I would go and buy more blazers. And a couple weeks later, I couldn't get my arms in them. In the meantime, I was also having severe pains in my arms and shoulders. I was changing the configuration of my desk constantly, and I had to sleep with heating pads. I'd cry on my way home to work every day because I was in so much pain. And my legs were becoming more inflamed and puffier. I had gained 50 pounds. I was feeling depressed and judged. People must think I go home and eat a pail of ice cream every evening because how do you gain 50 pounds in 6 months? Unless that's what you're doing. So I was like, I got to go back to my doctor because something is going crazy. I started wearing cardigans to work because I was tired of buying blazers and my arms were just exploding. So I took some pictures of my knees because they had just ballooned like crazy. You couldn't even see the kneecaps anymore, which, I hadn't seen kneecaps in a long time, but this was really bad. And I thought, I'm going to take these pictures to my doctor and he's going to be able to come up with an answer. And so I looked at these pictures and it was just like this light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, I can no longer deny that this is lipedema and I have to do something about it. And I remember after 4 years, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I took the pictures to my doctor and I said, look at these pictures. I have lipedema. And I remember him saying to me, oh, you mean lymphedema? And I was like, no, I mean lipedema. And he was like, I've never heard of it before. And he said, well, I think it's your varicose veins. I'm going to send you to a vascular surgeon. And I remember leaving that appointment and just feeling like so defeated. Like, here I am handing him what my diagnosis was, and he still was like, nope, never heard of it. So that was really frustrating. I met with the vascular surgeon. He right away mentions lipedema. And I just remember sitting there being shocked and wanting to cry. We talked about it while he worked on my veins, and I had asked him if he could give me an official diagnosis to take back to my doctor. And he said no, only because he knew it was lipedema, but he didn't know enough to diagnose my stage and type. He wasn't comfortable giving me an official diagnosis. He did tell me there was one vascular surgeon in Manitoba, the province I live in, that can diagnose lipedema. Otherwise, I think there's maybe one or two other doctors in our province. The women here don't have a lot of options who to get diagnosed from. He told me to go to him. At that point, I had started doing a lot of research. When I started researching, I started getting a lot of suggestions to accounts and Facebook. Facebook. I started following everybody I possibly could. There's a really great Lipedema Canada page, and there's a Lipedema Manitoba page. I started following all the surgeon groups and anybody I could find. I'd noticed in the Lipedema Canada, there were so many women being dismissed with this disease. And I just thought that would never happen to me. And here I was in that same situation. So yeah, I took it back to my doctor, and he thankfully had started to research it. He knew a little bit, but not a lot. And he was more than happy to refer me to the one who could officially diagnose me in our province. So that was really great.
Perfect. No, that's what I
Yeah,
was just going to ask you, how that part transpired. And because you have universal health care, going
Mhm.
to these vascular surgeons for an evaluation, is that covered?
Yes, that was all covered because I do have varicose veins. The treatment of the veins was really great. And being able to get the diagnosis and going to multiple of them, I saw two of them within about a year's time frame. That was really good. At that point in time, surgery was not anything I had thought of because it's a lot of money to have surgery. At that point, it really wasn't anything that I thought I would do. But my mobility really started to decline in mid 2023. It started to really decline. We live in a two-story home, and I was to the point where even the stairs in my own home, I was in so much pain. I was walking up them like a 90-year-old grandma could pass me on like stairs. I was so slow and my legs were getting so heavy. My husband and I love to cruise. We hope to travel a ton in our retirement. And I was envisioning me in a walker or him pushing me in a wheelchair. That's when I really started to research surgeons, was at that time.
Yeah, I feel it's still a lot like the story is still similar. Most people that I've talked to in the United States, it's very hard to find anybody to diagnose them. Their doctors don't know anything. It's very, you know what I mean? That is still the norm here as well. However, if you're going to multiple doctors to be diagnosed, that typically is not covered by insurance here.
Right.
Well, that specific doctor just doesn't take insurance, so if you wanna go there, you're paying out of pocket. I just had somebody say to me the other day, she's in Southern California, and it was looking for somebody to diagnose, and it was gonna be, like, $900 for her to get diagnosed.
Perfect.
I know that is a lot of money, but
Yeah.
if you are going down the road because you wanna have surgery, you really need to have that official diagnosis, and then here in the States, all the conservative measures that you have done in order for your insurance to possibly pay for. Doesn't guarantee. A lot of women are jumping through hoops. So even if your insurance policy does have a specific part of that does cover lipedema, you still need to have done all the conservative measures in order for that to even be slightly considered that they're going to cover anything. But
Right.
so Before you started looking for surgeons, because your doctor also didn't really know anything about this, what did you do for conservative measures? Did you do conservative measures? Did they talk to you about conservative measures and things that would help alleviate some of the pain?
Yes, the first one that I saw, he talked a lot about compressions, inflammation, and diet. I would have to say that where I learned most about conservative things that I could do and, just what were the best practices was from other women.
Yep.
I learned the most from these Facebook groups and just women who were even just steps ahead of me in the process. And so I did start to wear compressions. There was a few books that I saw referred that I bought, that I read up and, you know, starting to change my diet. I had already years prior cut out gluten. So, trying to eat less dairy and sugar and, anything good, basically it tastes good. It's not good for us to eat, is what I say. So, yeah, I would say it was the women that I learned the most from.
Yep, I do. I
Yep.
feel like social media is great for that because there's so
Absolutely.
much. I don't typically share this out loud. Not that I wouldn't share this, but I'm a registered nurse, but I don't practice as a registered nurse anymore because I was tired of the whole sick care, especially
Yeah.
here in the States. I don't really know how it is anywhere else, but everything here is based off of sick care mentality.
Yeah.
You go to the doctors, you get prescriptions, and they don't want to pay for preventative or functional medicine. You can do it, but you're going to be paying for it. A couple years ago, I told my husband, I can't do this anymore. I literally
Yeah.
cannot be going. I just don't believe in it. How can I be successful with my clients and helping them when I don't believe the sick care mentality that their doctors are telling them? I'm like, there's got to be other stuff. So I went back to school to get certified in nutrition, in which kind of where I went down the realm of getting diagnosed at the same time. So I was like, I'm really going to work with women, primarily lipedema women, but women with nutrition and how, because I think there's so much information out there, anti-inflammatory. I don't think most people know what that is. I mean, there's a few books you can Google search, but I think it's more so really working with somebody to help you figure out what is anti-inflammatory for your body. There is the
Yeah.
generic umbrella of these things probably inflame everybody. But sometimes it's something that I would think isn't inflammatory, but somebody is having a reaction to that. So unless I'm working with that client one on one and we're really like, look, what are you doing? How long you been doing this? Those things seem to help.
Absolutely true.
Tell me about the surgery process, like who you decided to go with, how you researched them, and what you have had done for surgeries and what you still need to have done or want to have done.
So when I first started researching surgery, I had joined a bunch of Facebook groups. There were some doctors' names that kept coming up that I was interested in. At that time, I wasn't necessarily sold on surgery overseas. My husband wasn't supportive. Later, I came to find he was just really worried about me doing these kinds of surgeries in countries where I don't even know the language, right? And so there was a little bit of, between us, some heated discussions about whether I was doing surgery. So we did agree I would look within Canada at that time. There are two surgeons who dabble in lipedema in Canada. They don't really know a lot about it. They do it as a side hustle. And when I looked into that, it was very quick decision for me to, take them off my list. Canada was not an option for me. I had four other surgeons that I looked at. One was in the US. I started following their Instagrams, Facebooks, researching their credentials, listening to what women had to say, Googling them, what kind of star ratings did they have? And so all four of them are fabulous surgeons. I see a lot of women who have had surgery with these surgeons. The three that I didn't choose, I don't think is anything that I would necessarily say is wrong with any of them. But the one in the US, I did kind of like a preliminary consult with him. The reason why I didn't choose him mostly was cost. His cost was a lot higher than what I could do in European countries. And so I ruled him out as, this cost was fully coming out of my pocket. So,
Right.
and then I did 3 consultations. I did 2 right away. When I booked all 3 at the same time, 2 I was able to have right away. One surgeon I quickly ruled out. The vibe wasn't kind of there. He's a fabulous surgeon, just wasn't what I wanted. The second surgeon was a top runner for me, but I had to wait for my third consultation for quite a while. The third surgeon had a longer waiting list, and that was really tough because I could have already had surgery with the second, the runner up. I could have already had surgery with him before I even had my consultation with who ended up being my surgeon. That was really hard for me to see how patient I was, but I couldn't not wait to have the consultation because in my gut, I felt like he was going to be my surgeon. So that last consultation was at like 4 in the morning because of the time change. I just remember hanging up the phone and my husband looking at me and saying, "You're going to do this, aren't you?" And I just said, "Yep." I had the biggest smile on my face. I felt so confident in this choice. And so that consultation was with Dr. Giorgiani in Germany. And I initially booked 4 surgery dates. At that time, I was planned to have 4 surgeries. So I booked them right away. Why did I choose him? Oh my goodness. So many things. First of all, his results speak for themselves. I did not see one post of his where I was like, those are okay results. Every post I saw of his, the results were absolutely fantastic. I can't say I felt that way about the other surgeons. There was always maybe 1 or 2 posts where I'm like, they're really great, but there was something I wouldn't like about it. One of the things I really liked about him, which I know some people don't like about him, is how direct he is. In my consultation with the other surgeon who was the runner up, when I talked about the quality of the skin on my legs and what it would look like after, I felt like he was fluffing it a bit, just kind of saying things like, "Oh, it might be better than you think." In my head, I wanted my legs to look like the friend I had talked about at the beginning who I admire. That's what I wanted my legs to look like when I'm done. And I remember Dr. Giorgiani being like, "No, your legs are going to have a lot of hanging skin. You already have bad skin quality. Removing all of this tissue from your legs is not going to make them better." And so I really did appreciate that about him because I needed to go in knowing what I was going to look like in the end, right? That was really important to me. One of the main reasons I like his approach, he does surgeries in fronts and backs as opposed to lowers and uppers. And I didn't want to look disproportionate in between my surgeries. And so that was really important for me, how he does that. I also liked that he stitches up his incisions because I've seen so many women who talk about taping puppy pads to them because they're leaking for days after surgery and making sure you've got the plastic sheets on the bed. And that there just was something about that I was like, yeah, no, no, I don't like that. And the placement, it's not even that he stitches his incisions where he puts them all. I knew I wouldn't just need my arms and my legs based on where my body has been and how my lipedema increased during menopause. I knew I would need my abdomen, my arms, my back, my butt, all of those things. And wanted to make sure I had a surgeon who I felt confident could do all areas of my body. So that was why I chose him. Absolutely no regrets with choosing him at all. He is a fabulous surgeon.
We have interviewed him too, and I love him.
Yeah. I saw your interview with him. It was really good.
Does he require you to come a certain amount of time before, stay a certain amount of time after? Like, what does that
Mhm.
process look like for him?
Yeah, you can come the day before surgery. That is an option for you, whether you want to or not. I did because I'm an anxious person. I knew if I was staying in an Airbnb, I wasn't going to get sleep that night. I'd be afraid my alarm wouldn't go off. I'd wanted to be in the hospital. The day before is an option for you. He only requires you to be in the hospital 2 days after. Whether you leave the country, you can leave right away. or he asks that you stay 10 to 14 days. That mostly depends on how far you're flying. For me, because of my varicose veins, I had a 24-hour travel time. My first flight from Germany into Canada is 10 hours, and my second one is 3 hours. So there's a lot of travel time with my legs. I didn't want to take that chance to leave right away. All three of my surgeries with my legs, we did end up staying. After that consultation with him, I went back to my doctor and I told him I decided on surgery. He was really supportive. We talked about trizepatides. So I started taking Monjaro. That was the end of August. So from the end of August, my first surgery was November 18th of 2024. I had already lost 25 pounds and a lot of inflammation. When I look at the pictures and the difference between my legs from those two dates, it just bewilders me. It's just so crazy to me how much inflammation I lost even before my first surgery. So November 18th, I had my first surgery with him. At that point, I had 4 surgeries scheduled. November was going to be the front of my legs, January, my arms, March, the back of my legs, and October, my abdomen. When he came in to mark me for my first surgery, he said to me he highly recommends either I add a fifth or I take away a surgery if adding a fifth wasn't an option. He wanted to do work on my butt and my flanks separately. He said I had a lot of volume in my butt. I had that shelf, as we call it in the lipedema world, on my butt. He asked me about pain in my hips, and I was like, yeah, I have constant pain in my hips. He really recommended it. He left it up to me, and I remember him leaving from marking my legs and just sitting on the bed in the room by myself. I just started crying because I was like, a fifth surgery. Each of these surgeries cost me approximately 25,000 Canadian, mostly because the Canadian dollar really sucks with the European exchange rate. I already was like $100,000 is so much money. And to add now a fifth one,
Right.
but I wasn't willing to sacrifice my arms or my abdomen because they're also a problem area for me. So I did end up deciding to add in that fifth surgery. So that first surgery, he did the front of my legs. He ended up removing 7 liters, which was less than he thought. He had originally anticipated 9. I remember when he talked to me after and told me he had only removed 7 because my legs were a lot more muscular than he anticipated. That was the first time I'd ever heard someone say my legs were muscular. Like, what do you mean? Because like I didn't even know there was muscles in these legs. So that was probably one of the best compliments I ever had about my legs. I ended up getting really sick from the anesthetic. I had a reaction to it. So those first 3 days in the hospital, I was throwing up constantly. I wasn't eating. And then we went back to our Airbnb for 2 weeks, which originally, this was during Christmas market season. So in my head, I was thinking, oh, no, we're going to go to a bunch of different Christmas markets and we're going to tour. No, it was none of that. We maybe went outside twice a day for 30 to 45 minutes for a walk. And like when I say a 45-minute walk, I'm sure a snail could have passed me. I was walking so slow, one, because I didn't have the energy.
Right.
And I ended up getting a seroma in my right knee, which I was so fearful for getting a seroma. So I went to MLD every day while I was in Germany. And I remember taking down my compressions for her to start working. And I saw it and I just started crying. And I thought, great. Another thing added to the list of feeling terrible. So I talked to him about it and he really reassured me it was nothing to worry about and it's going to go away on its own. And it did. It took probably about a month out of my MLD there and then back at home working on it before it went. But it did put me back in my recovery because that little bit I was starting to walk and do stairs was pushed back a bit from the mobility in my right knee. It was such an emotional, like you hear everybody say your first surgery is the worst. And I don't know if it's just because it's the first time you're experiencing this, but my poor husband, I just, I feel, I feel for him when I look back in that time. Like I was just such an emotional wreck and he did everything for me. I'm so grateful for him. He cooked every meal and cleaned everything, washed my compressions on my clothes. And, every time I was like, I need you, he would come and do whatever I needed. And so I couldn't, there's so many women that go by themselves. to these surgeries, and I just admire them because it's a lot. Like the recovery is a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So saying that, I went to surgery by myself.
Yep.
I had surgery in Atlanta, Georgia. There is a nurse there that started her own post-op care. All she
Mhm.
does is post-op care for surgical patients. She's 20 minutes from the hospital. I stayed with her for 5 days. I flew in the day before. She picked me up at the airport. I stayed at her Airbnb. It's the place that she runs her business out of. I stayed with her, and the next morning they brought me to the hospital where I had surgery. You stay in the hospital one night, but you check out the next day. And then depending on when you have surgery, you have a follow-up post-op appointment with the doctor or surgeon like 2 to 3 days out. I had surgery on a Thursday and the office is closed on Monday. So I stayed with her until Tuesday, went to my post-op appointment, and then flew home. It was great staying at a recovery house where somebody literally is taking care of you 24/7. I just thought, I don't even know financial wise, but just in general, to have my husband take a week off from work, have my daughter miss a week of school, for us to travel to Georgia, the whole cost of airfare. I mean, we could have driven, but I thought that was going to be a nightmare to drive and drive home. So I was like, oh, it'll be way better flying. But I was just thinking the whole cost of him taking off work. He has his own business, so not doing his business for a week. I was like, this will be just more cost effective if I just go stay at this recovery place and I have somebody take care of me. And I will
Yeah.
say my husband is great as well. However, he's not super assertive. So I would literally need to tell him what I need him to do. And I didn't want to do that. And I know when I got home, I have a hard time sitting still. So to sit around and let somebody wait on me, like when I was at the recovering house, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't do anything. But so I do agree with you. I think unless you did what I did and you stay at a recovery place, you definitely need somebody that is going to take care of you and do everything for you to have the best success at your recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm fortunate that my husband is retired, so he didn't have to worry about work, but it does add a lot of cost because there's the airfare for him. And I'm not flying back in an economy seat. Like I'm up there in the luxury seats, not because I'm enjoying the luxury. He was enjoying the luxury next beside me. I could have left him back in economy, but I didn't.
There's so many things to think about and consider when you're going to have surgery, driving. Because I mean, I'm for my second surgery thinking, yes, I'm going to stay in the recovery house again, but then I don't think I want to fly again.
Right.
But
Yeah.
for because a drive is 5 hours from where we live to where my surgeon is. By the time I went to the airport and waited and then flew and then got, the whole process, I was like, I could have been home for the amount of
Right.
time it took me to travel. I mean, my flight was quick. My flight was an hour and 20 minutes, but the whole process of the rest of it. And then I could feel my body swelling on the airplane. I had
Oh,
compression
yeah.
on, but I literally could feel my feet. But it could have also been that swelling period because I had surgery on a Thursday. I didn't fly home until Tuesday night. So I was really starting to set into the swell hell that everybody says that you're going to go through. Had I flown home sooner, that might not have been as bad
Case.
as the case was, but my feet were like
Yeah.
sausages when I got home,
I
thank
would
God.
I would think that the flying, because for me on that first surgery, it was 14 days after my surgery that we flew home.
Yep.
I had double compressed for my flight home and my legs swole up so bad that, and keep in mind, we were in business class seats. So it's not even that I had to bend them that far. I could barely bend my knee to get out of my seat when it was our turn to get up and move.
Right.
They had swollen so bad. And thankfully, we did the wheelchair service. There was no way I would have been able to walk. It's hard. Lying back is really hard on your body.
That's what I was saying. Even a 5-hour drive, I seriously think I'm gonna have my husband pick me up and fly there. I'll do my surgery, stay in the recovery house, and then you can come pick me up and we'll drive home because I don't think I want
Well,
to.
and with driving home, at least you can stop, walk around a little bit,
Yep.
put your legs up in the back seat.
That's what
Like,
I'm thinking. I can literally sit back, recline back, put my
yeah.
legs up and not have to deal with that swelling. It's painful when you swell
Oh,
like
it's so
that and your
painful.
skin is like, it's just not a good time.
No, it's definitely not.
I'm just looking at my list with a bunch of surgery questions, but you've covered most of them, which is good. So, from the surgeries that you have you noticed a difference in your mobility, your pain? Then,
I had 3 surgeries then, yeah. So when I had decided to add in that 5th surgery for my butt and my flank area, we had decided to do that in January and postpone my arms. He felt it would be better to get everything in my lower body done because I wasn't going to really reap the benefits of my legs until my butt was done, which was also causing a lot of pain in my hips. So my surgery, the end of January, so 10 weeks after the front of my legs, I did my second surgery for my butt and my flanks. He removed 4.1 liters from my butt. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, 4.1 liters, that's it. I came here for a second surgery and you only took out 4.1 liters. I remember telling my friend that, and she was like, are you being serious right now? I don't think how much 4.1 liters is out of your butt. She's like, you're being ridiculous. And it's great when you have those friends that can give you a reality check. So that was the end of January. And then sometime in February, he had done this little session on his stories about the number of leaders that get removed and how women, higher leaders doesn't mean better results. And he was really explaining about, the higher your weight, obviously, the higher percentage you can remove. And, someone who is a low weight and a lower stage that has a lower number, it doesn't mean their surgery wasn't as successful as someone who's a higher weight and had 15 liters removed. That hit home for me because, how I felt about that 4.1 liters in my initial disappointment. And I also knew my legs were so much smaller going into my third surgery that I knew I wasn't going to have a huge number to take. I could physically see
right.
that there wasn't going to be that much. At the end of March 24th, 10 weeks after my January surgery, he did the back of my legs and I removed 3 liters. So I've had 14.1 liters removed from my legs. Because I had 3 surgeries in 4 months, I felt like I was living in a constant circle of post-op, pre-op. I wasn't really feeling any of the benefits. Women will say, "Oh, my legs felt so much lighter." And I'm sitting here thinking, my legs still are so uncomfortable. I didn't really heal from one before I went in the other, and I have no regrets on that. I am so happy that I did it the way I did. Today is actually 8 weeks post-op from my last surgery. I still am feeling some of the sensitivity, the nerve pain that comes along with it, but I have noticed extreme differences in my mobility. I don't have knee pain anymore. I haven't had hip pain since my January surgery,
Nice.
which is just incredible to me. Even though I'm still in recovery mode, my walking, my husband and I went for a walk not that long ago and he was like, slow down. Why did you, I feel like I have these bionic legs. And you live with them for so long that until the heaviness is gone and the pain is gone, you just didn't know what you didn't know.
Right.
And so the relief that I'm already feeling, I can't even imagine what it's going to feel like when I am fully healed and no longer have any type of residual pain or uncomfortable feeling from surgery. It's going to be amazing. I now run up my stairs, my stairs that I had to take one at a time. I can run up and down them. And I remember the first time I did it, I all of a sudden realized I did it. It's those moments where you just start crying and you're like, oh, I just ran up my stairs. I haven't ran up my stairs in years. These are the moments when you're like, yeah, this was all worth it.
You have had 3, like you weren't even recovered from your
Yeah.
first in between each surgery because it's only been about 8 weeks in between each one, plus or minus. After you have your last two, and then probably 6 months after your last one, that's when you're going to be like, because you probably still have swelling from each individual surgery that
Oh,
hasn't.
absolutely.
I'm going to have to go listen to that explanation from Georgiani on leaders because I am the same way. My surgeon was like, "Oh, we're probably going to remove about this amount," which he said 10. So I was like, "Okay, great. I'm thinking this is going to be good." And then they removed just over 8. So for me, I was like, "Why'd you only remove 8? Like you could
Yeah.
have removed so much more." It's literally where kind of wherever he could reach without turning you
Yeah.
over. Even now, so I'm 5 weeks out. I went in the pool yesterday with no compression on, and I'm like, he literally could have taken a lot more off. But I also can see a lot of definition where I can already start to see, like, my skin's loose. I can see definition of muscle that I was like, "That wasn't there before." It's just interesting to hear that, and I would love to hear his perspective on leaders because the day you were saying something before about size-wise, and the morning we were going to surgery, between anesthesia, the nurse, and the surgeon had all told me that same morning how small I was. We were going down the hallway to the OR, and he's like, "Well, you're already so small, so this is gonna be great." And I'm like, "I just wanna say thank you." I said, "Because I would never, ever consider myself small, and you are the 3rd person that's told me this today." And he's
Yeah.
like, "But you are." He's like, "You might not feel like you're small, but in comparison, the surgery I had at 5 o'clock this morning, she was 350 pounds." So he's like, "You are small when if you want to put that into perspective to the person I did surgery on this morning." And I was like, "I just want to say thank you because I I don't feel small, nor has I don't think anybody's ever told me in a very long time that I'm small, but."
It's funny you say that because I remember when I met with that initial MLD who told me about lipedema, and she's working on my legs. And she said to me, if you ever had your lipedema removed, you'd be really tiny. And I just remember thinking, tiny is not a word I would use to describe myself ever. But it is funny now, like, especially my coworkers, they see me every day. A lot of them will be like, your ankles are so tiny or your legs are so tiny. It's just funny to hear that word because it's so surreal to me that somebody thinks anything about me is tiny.
Because we've lived with this for so long in the whole comparison game of how our bodies look to somebody else. Why can't
Yeah.
we just look like everybody else? For me, it's been at least 40 years that I have done that comparison or self sabotaging, self shame, where
Mhm.
you're like, you've tried every diet, you've tried all of this stuff, and nothing has helped.
Yeah.
So it is nice to hear something from somebody else, even though, like I said, it's hard for me to still even believe it.
Yeah. Your point to what you were saying earlier about the different surgeries and the different leaders. And one of the things that Dr. Georgiani always says is trust the process. Like you need to trust me. And as much as I 100% trust him, I think that's how everybody mostly feels about their surgeon, unless they've had a bad surgical experience. You continue to go to your surgeon because you trust them. But it's so hard because I know that he is seeing the end picture, and all I am seeing is what's going on in between. But now being at the end, like I just posted today, I took some comparison pictures today because it was 8 weeks and 6 months from my first surgery. I didn't really think I would see a difference between my surgery in March to now because he only took 3 liters. I say only because that was my mentality before. The difference to me is incredible. And it is so amazing to trust the process and see that final vision of what he saw at the beginning because I didn't think removing 3 liters from the back of my legs would make a difference to the front of my legs. But it does, like, the whole picture, right? And even I had some pictures that I had taken before I left for my March surgery, some side profile pictures, and in my side profile, I'm more straight along my back and into my butt, And now, I have that like a nice curve again, a nice shape again, but not a shelf. Even just seeing that where I'm like, oh yeah, the swelling in my back has gone down a lot in the last 8 weeks. And so just constantly be able to see those changes, but 100% trusting the process, knowing that in the end, all of these surgeries will work together to create how your legs will finally be, not just each one at a time.
Yep, totally agree. It is a process, and I think it's hard for us mentally to be there and trust the process because of the mental anguish that we have gone through all of this time. And that's why I think it's so great to be able to share personal stories with other women, not just interviewing doctors or PT or MLD, but for women to share these stories because your story might resonate with somebody who needs to hear that part of the process that you're in. Maybe she's in that same part of the process, and to trust the process because it's hard. It's still hard every day to trust process, pulling on the compression and off every
Yeah.
single day and
Yeah.
still doing all the things. MLD, I have a pneumatic compression pants that I try to do every day that I don't have MLD. It's still hard. It's the whole process. And then I'm like, my legs don't really look that swollen anymore. And that's where I'm already in my mind saying, oh, well, maybe you could have removed more. I'll do the pneumatic compression pants, and you can tell how much swelling I still have from the indents that the compression pants leave. And I'm like,
Yeah.
my legs are still pretty, but they don't
Um,
feel it as much.
you had made a comment that made me think of watching other people's processes. Just before I had left for my first surgery, I had said to my husband, do you think I should start an Instagram page? And I mostly thought of it because I didn't want to have to retell my story to my own family and friends. I wanted them to follow along my journey and be able to see this is what's happening to me. Never did I think that I would do something like that because it's very vulnerable to put yourself out there. I appreciated so much the women who were ahead of me and were showing that and being vulnerable because those are the women who I saw through the process and I watched their surgery journeys and I was able to be like, okay, I've seen where they've come from. And so I decided to start an Instagram page and I knew my close friends and family would join along. But, the amount of people that I just didn't, women in this community that I have connected with, like yourself, and was not something that I ever imagined. And the amount of women that I know who have come to me and said, hey, I followed your journey and I'm now talking to my doctor or I now have been diagnosed.
Yep.
It's just so amazing to be able to share that and see other women move forward from it.
I know that's why I started, obviously, before I even had surgery, I started this whole process with my private group, with helping women with the nutrition part of it, starting the podcast because I was like, I need to do something else. I was posting and commenting in the groups, but I was like, my group isn't enough. What else can I do to help reach? And there are a couple podcasts out there, but there's not a lot. And I just feel like it's just another outlet where I can share information, I can interview people, even though there is other lipedema podcasts, we don't all talk to the same people. We don't all interview the same people. We don't all come in contact with the same people. At first, I was like, there's already people doing that. But it's the same with YouTube. My business coach was like, you're already creating all of this for your podcast. Just repurpose the content and do a YouTube video. YouTube content. Not everybody's on social media. Not everybody listens to podcasts. And YouTube is the second largest search engine. So
Right.
that
Yeah.
is my next, I don't know, that's my next task. Being on video like this isn't the same as doing video for content. Does that make sense to you? This
Yeah.
is just like a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my really good friends, just after my last surgery, she was joking and she's like, we gotta really up your video game because it's really bad. I just laughed because I'm like, well, I don't really even know what I'm doing. I'm just taking little snippets of video here and there. It's a whole different level.
That's the same with my Instagram. I'll post all kinds of reels and still pictures, stuff like that, but I don't typically do a lot of stories or lives. And I know that I need to if I truly want, not just the business aspect of it, but for business and to actually reach more people. I really need to do more live stuff. But it's even when I first started doing this podcast, this was scary. I'm just recording it and then editing it and reposting it, but this was still
Yeah.
scary to me in the beginning. I know I need to do it.
I totally agree. And like I said, I have no regrets. I'm so happy that I started the Instagram page because
Yeah.
when I look back, I'm posting it as I'm living it and I know what's happening, but when I go back and I'm like, wow, I recently posted just after I left the hospital on my third surgery, I did a little video where I'm leading surgery from my first surgery, which was terrible with the anesthetic. And I couldn't decide if I was going to faint or throw up or do both. And I'm white as a ghost and I'm walking like a snail. And then I flashed to leaving on my third surgery where I'm basically leaving all happy and no problems and I'm waiting and I'm smiling. And when I look back on that, there's just so much emotion for me to see where I've come from on that. So a lot of it is really great for me in my own healing and
Yep.
my
I
own
was just going
journey
to
to
say
be able
that.
to. So I'm so thankful that I started it.
I've posted a little bit about my surgery process, not a ton, but I know that I need to. I have been taking pictures and all of this through the process. I just haven't
Right.
shared a lot of it, but I need to. I know I need to. So I have one more question. What is a piece of advice or encouragement that you would have for somebody listening to the podcast?
Well, probably two things. You just said pictures. Take all of the pictures. The before pictures, if you decide to go down surgery, take even more. Take them in different angles, different outfits. I took some in my underwear and my bra and my panties, and then I took some in bathing suits. And initially I was like, well, I'm never ever going to share the ones with my bra and panties. Well, here today I shared them all. And just take as many things as you can because through the recovery process, there's times where you think there's not a change, like nothing has happened. And then you see a picture and you're like, holy, like a lot has changed. And I would say the second thing really is just to give yourself grace. Like, this is such a hard disease to live with. It's so unknown. And there's so many other conditions that go along with lipedema, like POTS and Ehlers-Danlos and mast cell activation syndrome, and so many things where it's like, oh, that's why I never considered that there's something else that I have that's going along with my lipedema, and just allowing yourself to be okay with the fact that this is what's going on with you. I remember when I first heard about lipedema and that it was predominantly in women, I remember thinking, okay, well, I have sons, so this is all okay. And I remember my daughter-in-law very simply asking me one day, can my granddaughter get it from my son? Just emotional thinking about it. I
Yeah.
remember breaking down and crying and being like, I don't want that for her. I don't want that for anybody that I love because it is such a hard disease. And so I have said to myself, when I retire, hopefully it will be a few years from now, I want to be able to do anything I can to help our community and help future generations so that women behind us don't have to go through what we have. I don't want my granddaughter, I pray that her or any other future granddaughters don't get this disease. But if they do, I don't want them sitting in a doctor's office feeling dismissed and defeated. I want them to be in a part of life where they can be like, yep, this is what I have. This is what I'm going to do. So just give yourself grace for this disease. Yeah.
No, that's perfect advice. And I thank you for sharing. For your granddaughter, you know what I mean? Like you have been through this now. I don't want other women to have to go through what we have, but just for a peace of mind for you, at least because you have gone through it, it's something that you already know now. You've
Yeah,
already been through
absolutely.
it. So you can earlier in life look for the signs, look for things that are going on and not have to wait 40 years and she has to figure
Yeah.
it out herself
Yeah,
because
and
you
that's
went through it.
exactly when my daughter-in-law asked this, and I was so emotional. She said, "You know what? We'll cross that bridge, and if she does, she's going to have the best nana to help her along the way. She's not going to be alone." And I think that's what is so fabulous about this community, is that we're not alone.
That's my point, though. All of us want to share this stuff, so we're getting the information out there as well. That was my point too, like with my group and stuff, is I might not know everything, and I'm sure I don't, but I might be one or two steps ahead of you, or things that I do see a lot about nutrition. And I know that is something definitely that can help relieve people's pain and
Yeah.
inflammation. So you don't have to know everything, but sharing our experiences or the things that we have done, like just your whole explanation on the traveling piece, that might be
Mhm.
enough for somebody to be like, oh, she did this, and that might help somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you rescheduling with me,
Oh, no
taking the
problem at
time
all.
out to talk. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I love talking about it. I have 2 more surgeries to go, August and October. Maybe in 6 months from now, we can join up and I can tell you how great those ones turned out too.
Perfect. We can do another recap the end of the year after you've had all your surgeries and recovered. Little recap on how everything's going.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds
All right.
great.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I
Take care.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Stronger Than Lipedema. I hope you found inspiration, support, and valuable insights to help you on your journey with lipedema. Remember, you are not in this alone. There is hope and there are solutions. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. You can also connect with us on social media. Our websites will be listed below in the show notes for more resources and support. Until next time, keep advocating for yourself, keep learning, and most of all, keep believing in your strength. Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.